Welcome in, guys. This is Mike again with Restoration Minutes, and today I am here with Paul Silman of Clean Claims. Me and Paul have been friends for, golly, about 5 years now. Known each other, it seems like longer than that because our personalities
Seems
are,
like it.
yeah, are very synced like that. I consider him one of my best friends in the industry for sure, and just a friend in general. So today we're going to talk about some industry trends. We're going to talk about clean claims and Helix Co. and how our integration is going to work out. Because you guys all know I'm with Helix Co. And we're going to basically break things down quite a bit as far as what we're seeing trending in the industry. Try to give you guys a heads up on what we see coming and what we feel like needs to happen. Me and Paul are both veterans in the industry, and actually been hands-on, even though we're both with software companies now. Both of us have spent a lot of time in the field. You're talking to guys who have done all the levels of work from extraction to rebuilding to cleaning contents, and then all the way up to running $20 million large loss projects and time and materials. So, with that, Paul, you got anything you'd like to start off with? And then I'll ask you some questions.
No, I appreciate coming on. Yeah, it's just trying to simplify this. Being on, I'll give Mike the credit. He runs more of the large scale projects. I was more on the residential side for most of my career in the industry. So, just how do you take the same principles and concepts, be able to map out that, master bathroom, that small loss, but also be able to go to that commercial building or go to that hospital and be able to capture everything you need to? Because really, at the end of the day, your entire team is gathering data and information and coming in. So how do we create tools that are easy for your frontline technicians to get that info so that you're not spending hours and hours on the backside going through and trying to kind of go through all the data, figure everything's out. Just make it simple. It should be a more streamlined process than it is.
All right. Well, tell us a little bit about how Clean Claims came to be about, and what is the vision of Clean Claims?
Yeah, so CleanClaims was created by our founder, Lane Larson. Actually, while we're talking about it, I think I have it on a sticky note here somewhere else. CleanClaims was actually founded August 23rd, 2019. But no, Lane had built and ran 4 restoration companies in multiple states, and one of the big pains he always had were those Tuesday and Wednesday morning meetings. Where's the dry logs? Are we done? I can't submit this because we're missing these photos. Just those meetings, which I personally have been a part of, where you don't want to come in. You're struggling because you're like, oh, crap. I was up all night pulling hardwood floors, and then I forgot to take a photo, or we didn't take readings, or something got missed. And it was just that constant fight of never having enough. So he actually built this software to standardize what needs to be captured, but he was also looking to franchise and scale his restoration companies. And after it started getting going, one of the big things he had was, everyone has those crusty veterans in their company that, have the experience, but maybe are not the greatest culture fit. But we got to keep them around because he knows all the info. Really, at the end of the day, you're always trying to find, how do I replicate myself out in the field? So when building the software, he was able to actually find a young man that was working at a Taco Bell. Great customer service, hired him right there on the spot, took him, spent 2 hours at his flood house, walked him through it. That night, he went out and perfectly documented a water loss using the software.
Wow.
Zero experience, but also it just eliminates the human nature of, do I need to get moisture points on this job? Do I need photos? What contract did I need to get signed? Because we all know there's 900 different ways to do it. And then as they kept growing, he got a phone call from one of the heads of State Farm out on the west coast. He was based out of Utah, and asked him the question, why is it your companies get paid faster and have perfect documentation, and you're not even on our preferred vendor list? You're getting paid faster than our preferred guys are. He's like, well, we use this software. We follow the process every time. And that was kind of the light bulb that went off. Is there's like, you're creating the McDonald's of restoration. You don't need to franchise. You need to sell this. And that was kind of the leg that kind of pushed them into the software side. But really, it's just, those frontline technicians are your best salespeople. They're your best customer service advocates, but also they're your biggest data collectors. The success of a job is not necessarily the physical flooring you're removing. What's the square footage? What's our cubic footage? How do we know what equipment? Are we covering all our bases? Because if you have that, Mike, it takes 2 seconds to put a ROM together. It takes 2 seconds to build an estimate if I actually know what happened on the job versus I got those grainy photos that I'm digging through, trying to find, don't know what the baseboards look like. We're kind of making it up as we go. So just simplifying the data collection. But also, we make money by showing what we did on a job, not necessarily the sweat equity that goes into it. And that's where we want to help kind of propel people to not only go get the job done, but actually help drive revenue, get paid faster so that we have more cash flow so we can give bonuses. We want new shirts and trucks. It's a lot easier to do when money's coming in.
Yeah, I mean, we're the same way. I mean, at Helix Co, we have designed the software. It's all about documentation, and if you don't have documentation that you did it, it didn't happen. I mean, that's if
Mm-hmm.
you end up in a court of law, that's what you got to be prepared for. And what I find, especially for what you guys do is there's a lot of guys that have gone from doing customers themselves and direct work with salespeople and knocking on doors to merging into the TPA world. And that's where they realize that, oh my God, I've got to document all this extra stuff. And the rules are different for each program. And what I think is cool about CleanClaims is you guys can set up different profiles for different programs and know that you're following all those guidelines and capturing all the data. And you're not getting that rejection because you don't have a photo of that DHU or whatnot. So I think that's what's pretty awesome because I know I'm a process and procedures guy. You've actually worked for me in the past, and I know you are nuts about
Oh,
digging
yeah.
into the details. You're a process and procedure guy too, and so I think that that's what's benefited from us getting into these industries, and it blows my mind that there are people out there naysayers in the industry that want to complain that it's a restoration contractor that's involved in this company or that started this other company, you know, and who better to do it, man? And then someone who's actually done the job. I mean, one of the guys that are out there, and I don't want to say names, is not done a thing in the field for 35 years. It's been 35 years since he was a contractor. And he wants to complain about other people, but he started off as a contractor and got into this industry. So it's like blows my mind that they now want to turn around and complain, that people like Lane and, one of our investors, which doesn't even step foot into our building, but he's an investor in our company just because they're restoration contractors. And I'm like, who better to guide the principles than people who have either done it or are doing it in the field today and know what's actually needed and by the client? I mean, it blows my mind. And you guys have really taken off, at Clean Claims with documentation of photos and readings and drawings and sketches to now you've taken everything to another level with your new product that you just launched, which is your room scanning that
Mm-hmm.
produces 6 documents. And so tell us a little bit more about that and and how that's evolving and what the future looks like for that product.
Yeah, it's something we're super excited about. And to your point you just made, if I had to sum up what my job title would be, which in a startup you can just throw whatever hat you want on it on that time of day. Our job is translators. We have some of the smartest development people on the planet building this stuff. They've never stepped foot in a catastrophe loss before. So stuff that makes sense to a developer, that's great. John, who's 19, who's standing ankle deep in water, his development process doesn't mean anything. So that's kind of our guiding force. And that's why we're excited about our partnership is knowing that Mike and I will go on a job site and run this through paces to make sure it's simple, easy, and efficient. We know it's got to work for you. And that's the big key is anyone can put together development, anyone can have this stuff, but if it doesn't work out on the job site, it's useless. And the most powerful tool you can have is just the one you use every day. And if it's that simple, it works.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm excited to try. My goal is to have you guys fully integrated in our software before we go to Chris Carter's class, Global Catastrophe, in December. If
Mm-hmm.
any of you that are listening to this podcast would like to see the power of our two programs working together, then that's a great class for you guys to sign up for. Kind of give Chris and them a little plug.
Sign
Uh,
up. Period.
sign up
It's the
for it.
best training you can go to.
You actually get to play with both softwares without paying for it, because that's the biggest question we always get with demos is can I use the product for a few days? And I know we don't allow that for security purposes because we do have a SOC 2 that we're in the middle of, and you guys as well. But at these events, because we're able to control them in environment, we do allow that. And so Paul gives you guys access to CleanClaims software, and we give you access to Helix Code's time and material software, and you get to see how you're going to see how they both complement each other and are going to make basically anything that you turn into a consultant or an adjuster, it's going to be bulletproof. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
really is. And our industry, though, Paul, and we kind of talk about this for a minute, reluctant to change, and I know that one of the biggest pushbacks we get right now, I hear it, I know you hear it, is my guys have to work inside of 5 or 6 different programs a day just to do their jobs, and I agree. I mean, I've been there. I mean, you got to open up your photo program, then you got to open up your billing program and your scoping program, so on and so forth. And that's the reason integrations with companies like us are so important. That way, yeah, it may be different programs, but you're living in one environment.
Correct. And really, at the end of the day, we're trying to simplify this process. So what it is when you have your guys that are setting equipment or guys that are going out and taking moisture readings, they live in one spot, but all that information feeds seamlessly into one place. So now your project manager that's out on a cat who's maybe in his trailer right now is running through HelixScope, but all the data that we have, all the moisture points, all the readings, all the psychrometrics, all that is living in CleanClaims, but is feeding directly into HelixScope. So this is where you may have different tools in different places, but all that information is feeding into one simple, easy to use place so that we're not having to download, click upload, click here. Click. We're in a world of too many damn clicks. I want to be able to go out, get the job done, and move on, but also do it in a process that you don't have to go back. Now you don't have those PMs who are up till 2 in the morning outside of a cat trailer trying to go through mountains of paperwork just so he doesn't get bogged down again tomorrow, when this stuff should be easier to do. I say that out of experience, but it's how do we make sure that's simple? And that's where, to our point earlier, we're super excited about our area scanning tool, and then a new update we'll be having coming out on our moisture mapping. It's the tool that every restorer has asked for years and is finally coming to fruition. I can instantly go through, scan a room, mark on those walls instantly where all my moisture points, where my equipment is, what are my recommendations, what are my psychrometric readings, all in one 2D scan that can instantly go directly into a HelixCode if you need an ESX from it. But it's all going to be instant and live right there, so we're not waiting hours for stuff to come back. We're not struck. Just go get started, get the work done, because once we set the baseline, we have our dimensions, we know our cubic footage, we know our equipment calculations. My guys can start working now versus, well, now I'm sending a first responder. Now we're waiting for this. Well, I'm going to arrange. It's wasted time and effort and money. You're just wasting time. But also because it's all geolocated, it's all time stamped. We know who did it, when they did it, why they did it. It's now done and safe, so I'm not having a PM who is basically a glorified clerk at this point in time, sifting through paper. Now they're managing the project, not sifting through documents all day.
Yeah, I mean, I've had binders on jobs, especially when you get into commercial and large loss, much less the photos, and are stupidly high. But I've had binders sometimes that are that thick for one job, and then I've had some projects where we do multiple buildings, like for a school system or something like that. We've got enough binders to fill up like 4 or 5 bins, and that's really all one bill to one client, and that's not including the photographs. And so then when you start trying to send your information to your adjusters and your consultants, you're sending them scans. You got to scan all that paperwork in the old school way, and then send that to them. And then they got to try to sift through that mountain of garbage. And then then you have to use another program to send your invoices. You usually put them in a Dropbox or something like that from your vendor invoices and receipts. And then a whole nother link for your photos. And so what's great about us is everything is digital. And so when
Mm-hmm.
you're working within CleanClaims or Helix Co., we geolocate all your people that clock in and clock out. There's no arguing if you have two. Carlos Mendias on a job site, then you'll be able to prove that, yeah, they were two different people. You'll be able to prove that they were on the job site because it geolocates them and takes a picture of them while they're clocking in, and then all the documentation is there, and what's cool is we've got new things, features that are coming out next year with equipment scanning and geolocating. And Paul and them, what I'm going to ask him about next is the remote monitoring. I mean, that's a whole nother piece that CleanClaims has that we hadn't even talked about yet. And so with our two systems working together, there's really no need for any other program when it comes to commercial work. So Paul, tell us a little bit about your remote monitoring because that's the biggest exciting thing. I know you go crazy playing around with your router and
Oh,
stuff wherever just to make sure you got signals and it uses multiple servers. Tell us a little bit about that.
so the remote monitoring is just kind of the cake on top. Our software is top in class and we'll put it against anyone. But when you power that with our remote monitoring, it's unbelievable because not only am I now able to have a thermal hygrometer on site, so I'm capturing all these readings every 10 minutes. So now I can actively see, is someone breaking containment? Is my dehue stuck in defrost mode? Are we getting the actual drying effect we want? But now I also now have active logs showing my equipment's running. Because what's the number one problem we have? Well, I got one photo of this dehue from the first day, and you're saying it was 7 days, but we're missing readings for 3 days, so we're going to cut your bill down. This solves this problem instantly. Now I have a live, trackable document that's showing where it was, when it was running, and how long it was running with the reports. So now I have everything I need to back that up. But really, the key is not only our thermal hygrometer, we do also have your penetrating moisture meters as well, so you can actually track all those moisture points. But the real key to this and where we stand out is we are Wi-Fi based. So you're not stuck to the 15 to 20 foot radius for Bluetooth. Our base stations actually create the Wi-Fi right there on site. So this actually ties to whatever the strongest cell tower is, regardless, AT&T, Verizon, whoever. It's unverified by us, but we've been told it connects to FirstNet and some of these ones after a storm as well. But this allows you to have not only all the data's live in, Mike can be in Ohio right now and could actually tie in directly to see what's happening on these readings on a job down in Florida without having to be on site. But it's also verified data. So we're not manipulating data. We're not making up psychrometric readings. It's giving live feedback from it. Because really, at the end of the day, of course, any of your old school trainers and everything are going to say how you have to be on site every day. You have to do this. I'm not disagreeing. But why don't we take one thing off your guys' plates of having to go to every single dry chamber to stand there, hold your... This can do that for you and just eliminate so much headache, so much time, drive time back and forth, especially in a cat scenario. If I got 18 projects going on and I have 5 guys that have to get to all these things and moisture map all this stuff out, this is the best employee. You don't have to pay healthcare benefits. You don't have to feed them lunch. It's a phenomenal tool, but also it just frees up more time for your guys to work more on the quality, not quantity of what they're doing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, now we're going to pause here, and then we'll start into another subject. So that way I can just splice it right here at 32 minutes, I think, into the recording. All right, cool. All right, guys, I'm back here with we have Paul with CleanClaims again with us. We're continuing our conversation on technology, and he's in our previous podcast. He had spoken a lot about CleanClaims and how we're integrating with Helix Co. But now, just because of our experience, we're going to kind of move into trends that we're seeing in the industry, not really promoting our products, so I'm sure we'll mention them some just because that's what me and Paul do. But, Paul, why do you think, contractors in general, we're talking obviously restoration contractors is the majority of both of our clients. Why are they so reluctant, in your opinion, to embrace new technologies?
It's a catch-22. So this industry, not long ago, we were spraying bleach on mold and floating carpets, in the mid 90s, to where now we have we're testing, we have our standards are getting higher, and our pace of technology has gone faster than some of the, frankly, it's moving at a faster rate. I mean, at one point in time, you could go inspect a job, and if you got an estimate over to them within 3 days, that was considered fast. Now they want within 12 hours, you want reports, 24-hour reports, you want all this stuff instantly. And our software stack hasn't necessarily been up to par, or maybe it's just evolving at a faster pace. I mean, just look at the pace of which AI has come on in the past couple, I mean, hell, 12 months. Like, it's moving at a very fast rate. But also, I see us at a very interesting time. So, what, 10, 11 years ago, you used to have these individual products that were great at one thing. Then they got acquired. Then now you get these big conglomerates, and everything's kind of stayed stagnant for the most part, to where now we are a field documentation and remote monitoring. We're trying to stay and be as good as possible as just that lane. We're not creating a CRM. We're not creating an event. We're staying in just what we're good at, but then also finding partners that you can tie into and make that stuff work. But really, it's simplifying it. I was just on a job site with one of our clients this past week, and they were using one software for photos. They were using one for client information. They were using a Google Sheet for this one. And, I'm watching a guy try and get an estimate together that's bouncing between 6 different software. It is a headache. It is a bit of a pain. So we want to just simplify it down to say, what are the key items you need to get? How do we make it simple, efficient, easy to where if you're brand new or a 10-year veteran, it's easy to use. But a lot of it too is just, some of these products are complex. There aren't great training mechanisms necessarily with the product, or just such high turnover that if you're a small to medium sized company, you may not have a trainer on board. So it's just kind of a, the adage, Mike, just jump on the truck and figure it out. We're not exactly in the best. I think there are some tools and we're getting better with that, but it's really how do we adopt things faster and more efficiently and get buy-in from your team? Because we all know owners love to see new technology. They see the ROI, and normally once you sell them a product, you get on a call with that project manager who's just like, oh crap, I got to learn something new. We just figured out this other one. Now they're changing it. It's really how do you set it up, but really, what do you want this software to do, and how do we achieve that goal? Because a lot of times you'll get into these calls and it's, well, I just want it to do everything.
Yeah, I get that. And, I find one of the biggest things that I'm finding as well is that there are a lot of contractors, that are willing to evolve, and
Mm-hmm.
my motto, even in life, is evolve or die. If you stay the same, then in business, you're going to be overtaken by the newest, brightest thing. So you've got to be evolving. But one of the problems is, not so much the contractors themselves, but also the insurance companies, the adjusters, they are still stuck in the documentation that they want to see and that they ask for. That really hasn't changed much in the 20 years I've been in the industry, you know, but they're asking for more, and
Mm-hmm.
so, we produce some things, I'll be on a job site, and granted, my last 10 years has been more, focused on commercial, but then, adjusters will be like, oh, well, I want this. And I'm like, golly, man, nobody does that no more, and then there's people, especially in our T&M space, that are out there that because their software that they had did not do some of the newer technology things, they've been telling lies to contractors for the last 10 years that I've known who they are, and by basically saying the FEMA will not, if you're doing FEMA work or you're doing government work, they will not accept anything except paper documentation with blue ink. Well, I'm sorry, there was a law passed. I got it in my white paper I've done. I want to say it was in 2013, 2015. I have to pull it up. Basically, it is a e-signature law that the federal government passed that forces all government agencies, including FEMA, to accept digital signatures. And, that's been out there for over 10 years, and these people are still going around because their technologies don't do it. And so you get these people that are supposedly subject matter experts and, that have been in the industry, old dogs for a long time. And trust me, I love a lot of those guys because they know more than anything. but the ones that have an agenda behind them, um, they're lying to people. Either that or they're misinformed and stuck in their old ways. I don't know which one. I don't want to come out and call them direct liars. And part of that problem too is not so much that FEMA itself will not accept it. What we find is that adjusters, and this is in non-FEMA space as well, they have a playbook, and they have a playbook, of what they think they can and can't do for a job, and they never read the freaking policy, which is the contract between the client and the underwriter. And so they'll try to say that we can't do that, or we can't accept that, or we don't cover that, this and that. And it's like, have you even read the policy? And they're like, no. And I'm like, you need to read the policy. I mean, that's not my place, but I talk to the client and get the client's legal side or their risk manager involved, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, it's in my policy. Well, we don't do that. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Adjuster. This is my contract. And it's the same thing when adjusters come to us, and they say, oh, especially when they bring in consultants, and there's some good consultants, there's bad consultants in this world, and this is true in the residential space too. A lot of people now are having companies come in, especially in their larger residential losses above $50,000, and having a consultant review their invoice and their paperwork at the end of the job after it's done, and then asking for further documentation when the contractor followed his program guidelines. And that is like mind blowing, because your contract is with the client. If you're doing a one-off job and you're not part of a TPA type of thing, and you're not required to provide that stuff. If you guys have listened to my other podcast, I mean, and I really, if you guys hadn't, I give a plug to Ed Cross here. If y'all have not read any of Ed Cross's books, I've been fortunate enough to work with a company that actually has hired him a couple of times. His books are very, very helpful for the residential space and the commercial space as far as knowing what you can do to educate your client. But I find that side of the industry a lot of times, because they have that playbook, and they'll tell contractors that they can't do certain things, and so contractors feel like they can't adopt the new technology because this adjuster wants it in a certain way. But the fact is your contract is your contract, and that's what's going to stand up in a court of law. Okay. And that is got the consultant has no bearing. The adjuster has control of the claim, but he cannot require you to do things in certain ways. And they try to bully contractors, and contractors fall for it all the time. That, oh, I got to produce this report and I've got to turn it in to this consultant every day. No, you do not. You are not required to turn anything over to any consultant. So I think that side is also part of the dynamic of adopting new technologies, because in a court of law, the new technologies are doing great. I've got contractors that have used our software on, just had a $8.4 million project go through our software. No problems. The consultant loves new technology, was all about it, loved how we documented everything. It was good to go. But then you still have those other consultants out there that are like, no, I'm used to seeing it this way. Well, I'm sorry, my contract actually says I can use digital records, so.
Part of it's a unique thing because I always like to highlight I started out as a contractor, then became an adjuster. On the adjusting side, mind you, this is my experience in the companies I worked for. I never got a gold star for the millions of dollars I saved the company I work for. I was judged off our customer service scores.
Yep.
Plus, most adjusters, correct, they have a playbook, they have a spreadsheet they're going through. They don't necessarily have the why behind it, but they're also not restoration contractors. They're just trying to get through it. But also, how do we shift the mindset a little bit of how do we assist them to close a file? Because they got 200 of these. If you can give them what they need to look at it, it justifies themselves. It justifies what I can pay, and I don't have to worry about my boss coming down on me saying, why'd you pay this file? We're missing stuff.
Yep.
Solves the problems.
Absolutely.
And that's where we're actually having those conversations with carriers saying, what do you actually want? Because a lot of it's hearsay. Oh, well, this software said they need this. Well, come to find out, they don't actually need it. They're just trying to figure it out. So we're actually having the conversation with carriers saying, what do you actually want? What kind of contracts do you need? What are those key things you're looking for in a 24-hour report? Or how do we help expedite this closing of the claim? Because if I give you the documentation you need and I can close it faster, that means a payment's issued faster. It's off their desk. Now they have a great taste in their mouth that I dealt with XYZ Restoration Company because they gave me what I needed to close the file. Because really, I had a $50,000 off limit. So anything under $50,000 I could stroke a check for and be gone. But if you gave me what I needed and I had everything to where if my boss came and asked me a question about this file and I could pull it up and say, here's why, here's this, here's that, I paid that claim instantly.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things that, with all the checks and balances that we both have in our systems, at Helix Co. and at CleanClaims, it's hard to argue with. It really comes down to what kind of format does the client want it in, and that's the client. The client, I know with TPAs, it's a little different. Your true client is the customer because you do have to sign the contract with the customer, but you have agreed to another contract with this TPA system. This claims management system, TPAs, whatever you want to call it these days. It's all the same thing. And they have an agreement with the insurance companies, so you get all these different parties involved. That makes it tough on the contractors, and it's like, if you could tell us exactly what you want, then the programs can be built to provide that information. The cool thing is I know that both of our softwares capture above and beyond. That way you're always covered, so,
correct. And
that,
it's funny you mentioned that. One of the last trade shows I was at, one of our clients was standing at our booth and was like, oh, God, these guys are harping on us on our equipment usage. He goes, let's try this out. He already sent over their invoice to him, so he turned around and sent or his CleanClaims file over to him with all the equipment logs showing all the readings and everything that's time stamped and dated. And he's like, oh, we'll see how long this takes. And before we could even finish the conversation, he had an email back that's like, all right, payment's on the way. You gave us everything you needed. It wasn't
yeah,
anything over complicated, but you can't argue data. You can argue
that
opinion.
and what has happened on the adjusting side, especially the third party management, is they have built their technology now. They have their own AI that is reviews the claim and looks for targets, And so then contractors find themselves trying to find ways to work around that. Once they figure it out, and it's like this back and forth game continuously. Once the insurance companies write the program that rejects the file because of XYZ, now the contractor has got to go back and learn that, oh, I can't put that in there. Where if the program guidelines can be built into your software and our software, to where it requires the contractor to do these things, life will be much simpler. Because at the end of the day, and especially on commercial, and I know you guys were originally built for commercial, even though it is very applicable for residential as well. We're primarily solely for commercial. Now, we have been used, we do have some clients, and we do have one insurance underwriter that is going to test us actually for time and material in Texas, I think is going to be in January. Um, it's going to be interesting. I'm excited about it. But, at the end of the day, if they can tell us what their program guidelines are, we can build that into our systems, both of our systems, to where that's the report that they get. The problem is that the actual insurance company these days never look at any of that. That they don't. They're relying on the third party management people to do all that work for them. And so the adjusters get the bill and they're just like flip through it and it's okay. It's a numbers thing to them, really. And in the commercial world, and I think this is where a lot of people don't understand what the importance is of the 24-hour report and things like that. Commercial world, we get that because in the commercial world, you're having to set that wrong, that rough order of magnitude, or the reserve, as some people used to call it. And good God, some people we all used to do, used to call the not to exceed number, which I hate. You guys can listen to my other podcast about making sure you use ROMs instead of those words. That is so that the carriers can set aside that amount of money. They've got to set a reserve on their side. And so in large loss, and I've had clients where I worked with them on a commercial basis, on a regular basis, and their biggest thing they loved about me is I gave them a mitigation and a construction rough order of magnitude numbers so they could set their reserves, and I hand it to them every time the same day. Same day. Now, when you start getting into storm related losses, that can be a lot tougher because you're not talking about a sprinkler head that burst in a museum or something like that. You're talking about multiple buildings, multiple floors, multiple rooms, roof issues, the whole nine yards. But 48 hours is still what is expected. And it's perfectly doable with tools that we have in both our programs. Back circling back to the technology thing too is marketing from our point. And this is kind of, we're going to merge this into maybe another podcast at this point. Contractors, owners are still stuck in Facebook and LinkedIn, and most of them have not merged into other avenues, that are out there, Reddit, Instagram, so on and so forth. There's all kinds of new chat and communication tools out there that people are using. And so a lot of them are still stuck in old school marketing mechanisms. And so, hiring someone outside of our industry to kind of go market to contractors is tough. They think they've got all the stuff down. They got the SEOs. They know how to build the websites and all this and that. And the problem is most of the contractors in our industry that are sole proprietors. I've owned 4 or 5 companies myself in my lifetime, and they don't want to look at that crap. They have spent all day. It's kind of the reason the contractor's house, the wife can't never get the contractor to do any work at the house. It's because he's been
Mm-hmm.
doing it all day. He don't want to look at that when he comes home. And so it's kind of the same thing. People are so involved in our industry all the time. It is hard to reach those people, without going and doing face to face. And that's what Paul is great about.
Yeah, I think there's a power. I'm a big believer. There's a power to knowing the industry and being able to speak the language and being able to go onto a job site, which is why CleanClaims loves. We go to more job sites. We go and train you in person. We love going on it because we are contractors. But I'm also very optimistic. I like to look at other industries and other markets because they've probably solved the issue we're dealing with somewhere else, but also what are aspects that we can bring in? What are things we can do there? We're in a world of call it what you want. No one wants to buy anything from a salesperson. They feel like they're getting one up by a salesperson. We're in an influence society. When's the last time you looked in a Sears catalog and bought something? Even though that's probably a bad example, no one gets catalogs or no one calls the salesperson. They get online. They look at what their friends to buy. They look at reviews. Same concept. Finding someone who maybe is not from the industry who's good with taking short videos, doing one, it's a great documentation tool because we need that kind of stuff. But two, if we are documenting everything properly, why don't we take some of those assets and use that and share that or share those stories, do things differently? There's a huge power and avenue to it. I mean, don't get me wrong. Everyone loves seeing the parade of 18 wheelers and trucks every time a storm's going on somewhere. But what about the why? What about the after? What about the job setup? We're in a weird time now where we're actually going to be doing some marketing assets going into the next year where everyone thinks it's how cushy all these trade shows and traveling are. And you're going to come along with us and quickly realize it's not as glorious as you think it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm probably going to hurt some feelings on this part, but it's one of these things where, and I come from the restoration world, guys, so I'm speaking now as a restoration contractor. Why in the world are you posting your ads? It's okay for communication amongst individuals, but these guys go on and they post their ads on LinkedIn and on Facebook, and only the people that they're friends with are going to see that. So if you're not friends with your client, okay, that you're trying to reach, then that is a waste of time and energy, guys. So you need to know where your client is going for information. Where does your client go for news? And that's your target client. So it blows my mind that contractors are like, oh, we're doing Facebook, we're posting things on Facebook. Okay. Well, if you're not friends with your potential client on Facebook, then the client's never going to see that unless you're doing promotional stuff, and paying for the promo stuff. So, and there are contractors out there that think that that is their marketing plan. is to do Facebook posts and to do LinkedIn. And yes, those things are important. I feel like LinkedIn and Facebook are more important to building industry relationships. Unless you're something like a software or a tool company or something like that, contractors actually need in the field, then it's a great advertising, revenue area. But for the contractors themselves, if they're residential, then God help them, they've got to go out and they've got to actually be working, different angles of marketing and advertising and things like that. Facebook and LinkedIn ain't it, because your potential client on the residential side don't know who you are because they haven't had a water damage yet, so you haven't even had a chance to connect with them. So unless you're paying for promotional stuff, then you're getting nowhere. And same thing with LinkedIn, and I love both of those platforms. We market on there because that's where our target audience is at.
Mm-hmm.
And because of my 18 to 20 years in this industry, I've built a lot of relationships through social media. And I know that you have too. But when it comes down to from the putting my contractor's hat on, what is the best avenue, to market? Most people aren't watching TV the way they used to. They're streaming, and so you've got to have salespeople that know how to try to get out there, even especially for the commercial side. Everybody wants to try to get into commercial, and that's great, wonderful. I love it myself. I could probably never go back to residential, even though I did residential for 15 years of my career. And I oversaw residential, when I was a regional manager in my last job, because I wore two or three hats when you worked for me as well. But the sales side is becoming a big challenge for contractors. They're going through salespeople like water, and these salespeople, I think, the best thing that ever happened to me, kind of backstep a little bit, is I started in sales. That's how I got started in this industry. I was working on my master's degree and I knew I could sell. And so I went to work for a Surf Pro and blew everybody away and made all kinds of records. I became like one of the top salespeople in the country in 2008, like my second year in the industry. It was crazy. But things have changed. Used to we could call on agents and adjusters, and go to their offices and get work referred to us, and the other side of it, where I'm working at the commercial side of things, it's still there, but it's all about relationships now, and to me, that is what is missing from my industry. We went through this phase about 5, 10 years ago where everything was digital and social media, and now we have circled back to old school, I feel like, to where it's all about relationships because that's where you're actually going to make the phone ring. What you
It's
think?
funny. It's funny you say that because one of my first sales jobs was working for a company called RS Hughes, which was one of 3M's biggest distributors. Wasn't an ideal fit for me. I learned a lot about respirators, but I was also trying to sell grinding discs to oil manufacturers when they had me in a button down and a tie out in the middle. It was not the ideal fit, but that was back in when you had to spend $3,000 to $5,000 a month buying donuts, going to lunches. Like your job was to go walk in the back door, meet people, take them to lunch, do all that kind of stuff. And then, like you said, we kind of hit this weird digital transformation where it's like, okay, I don't need field reps anymore. I don't need to do this. AI is going to send all this stuff out. Some of the biggest relationships, I still send postcards to people. It's amazing how showing up and bringing just donuts in the morning or something can still be good, but it is. I see this industry now. This is a little bit from the software side, but I think it applies to contractors. You see a lot of stuff online about the SaaS models. It's all about getting out, grinding calls. You got to hit these metrics every day, which there is a power to that, but it's more of a hybrid. Yes, you want to be calling. Yes, you want to be following up. Yes, you want to be in front of the client. But Mike can tell you this, sometimes the best call you ever get is because the guy you talk college football to for 20 minutes. Like
Yeah.
there is a power to slowing down and making a personal relationship versus, cool, I got to get to 45 clients today. I got 10 minutes. Hi, how are you? This is what we do. And go. There is a power to sometimes slowing down, getting to know the person or actually explaining what you do versus here's a flyer and a pamphlet. I'm gone.
Yeah. Yeah, and what it's crazy because it seems like everybody's all over the place right now as far as trying to find clients. Claims are down, I believe, about 40% across the country. this past year. So a lot of contractors, especially that travel and mobilize for storms, were hoping that they'd have a good storm year, and we have none. No, so a lot of contractors are hurting financially out there right now. And they're trying to look for sources of revenue. And probably the best advice I can give, and I actually spoke to a contractor about this the other day. He has about 12 locations, and he told me, he's like, man, I think I'm going to cut some people. We didn't get a storm this year. I was counting on that. Claims are already down. We went from $20 million in revenue, from our residential side to about 14 or 15. He said, so we're missing about $6 to $8 million, projection for the rest of the year. He's trying to figure out. And he's like, I'm going to cut. I've got to let some people go. And my question to him from the consulting side, if you guys don't know, I also have a consulting company, um, is I was asking, okay, what are your reserves like? And he's like, no, I got plenty of money in reserves, but I'm looking at my day-to-day finances and budgeting. And I said, okay, so this is where the strong get stronger and the weak get weaker, is when the economy gets tough. Rich people get richer. When you look at investors and people that have money, and that's because they buy when the stock drops because they know it's going to recover. And you need to do the same thing as a contractor. If you can afford to keep your salespeople out there, heck, bring in more, okay? Because the other guys that are weaker are not going to, especially if you got the money in reserve. So this is for you strong contractors out there. The guys that don't have money reserves and haven't been a good squirrel and put things away, they are going to have to cut people. If they are, I'm already hearing about it. I've got friends that are looking for jobs. Me and Paul knows one right now that's a great guy, generates revenue. Can't find a job right now. Can't find a job. And when those people draw in, this is your opportunity to get in front of those clients. Spend that money, get an extra salesperson on board, knock on some doors, start building those relationships while the economy is weak and slow, and you're going to be amazed at the growth that you have. Okay, because those other people are going to lose ground while you're gaining ground. You may not get the results from it for the next 6 to 12 months, but it's going to happen, and then you're going to be in a much better place.
It also comes back to what's your strategic plan for next year?
Yep.
If you're residential and want to get into that commercial market, I can tell you right now, there's some killers out there that know that commercial side that are looking for that opportunity. Maybe that's something you go into. Or are you diversifying? Are you living and dying on a TPA sending you work? That's a first red flag. Do you have a commercial division? Are you waiting for leads to come in? Are you also, and I'm a big proponent. I did a lot of work with TPAs and did very well with them, but it wasn't our only source of revenue. We also had a sales department. We had a commercial department. Are you clean? You know,
Don't
do
put
you
all
have
your
a
eggs in.
where? Do you have a warehouse full of washing stuff for contents? Great. Have you ever thought about opening up doing laundry for people? Do a subscription. They put the bag on the front porch. Guess what? I'm driving around in the truck with our logo. Like, are there different ways to diversify your business and different things you can do? Or are you just waiting for a sprinkler head to burst?
Yeah, and another thing, especially for smaller contractors that may be listening and tuning in, I think one of the big things that you can do right now is start building relationships with other contractors that are bigger than you. It's one of those old adages. Surround yourself with the people that you want to be like. And so if you are friends with other small contractors, that's great. They're not going to be able to lift you up and provide you something new. Okay. So you need to try to befriend someone that's bigger than you. And at Helix, we actually just created, kind of transition into a sales pitch. We just released what's called our job relay, uh, which is solely a program within our thing. Because these bigger contractors, they may have clients that have, offices in 20 states, for example. They got a whole region, but that contractor only has a couple of offices. So job relay is basically a whole thing where you basically have to put in your capabilities, your equipment, your people that are willing to travel, or what you can even do in your own area for another contractor. And then it also kind of does like similar to Profile Gorilla, where we monitor your insurance coverages and make sure you're hitting those certain milestones that you have to have for coverage. And then you can build relationships with other contractors within our program that may have jobs that they want to send out to you. Okay, and so that is another source of revenue right there, or at least an area to get to. Because when I was with, and I don't think it's wrong for me to say who I used to work for. I used to work for Royal Plus and RP Cat. I'm still friendly with Matt. Talked to him just about 4 days ago. Um, and we would call in on storms. Oh my God, we'd call in 15, 30 different contractors to help us out. And they all made great money. All made
Mm-hmm.
great. We shared the work because our goal is to take care of that client so they keep calling us. And then the same thing, I would get a call in South Florida, for example, and I would call one of my friends down there that was another contractor. My guys were in Orlando. They couldn't drive 3.5, 4 hours to be there on time. So I would call that other contractor I built a relationship with. And that's the reason, organizations like RIA is great as well.
Mm-hmm.
RIA is the best trade show and group for you guys to be with. A, for education, but B, for networking with other contractors. This isn't a trade show where you're going to get in front of adjusters and consultants. It's a group and organization. If you're not part of as a restoration contractor, I urge you to join. Me and Paul both are members and have been on the contractor side, and now we're members on the vendor side. Um, but it is an important way for you to build relationships with other contractors. And the cool thing about that is then they also start sharing ideas with you and methodologies. That way you can learn and uplift your company and become better. There's a reason they're big as they are. Is because they have figured some things out that you probably haven't figured out yet, whether it's sales or it's a process of procedures or how to get land bigger clients, so on and so forth. So I think that's another great area in the sales side and marketing side that contractors can look at to spend their money over the next few months.
That, and if you're going into the holiday season, going into Q4, if you are in a downtime or something going on, I always found in some mentors I gave me, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you need to find another room. That's not a
Hey,
good thing. But
yeah,
also, if there is that bigger contractor in your area or in your city or local nearby, why not go say, hey, can I take you to lunch? Can I pick your brain on some things? You would be shocked at how people will open up the doors and show you, hey, this is where we're struggling, or this is our strong suit, or you know what? If you're that new restoration company and you do have that first big loss come in and realize I have one van's worth of equipment and now I have somehow or another signed a high rise, I need those strategic partners and friends who can pull out that 18 wheeler or pull. You know what? You don't have to go and buy that large scale desiccant and spend $200,000 to be a restoration. There are more than enough people that will give you the shirt off their back and come assist you take care of that client. But you need to go out and have those conversations, meet those people. Maybe go find that sales team that's killing it and be like, guys, is there something we can do together? I know a contractor here in Charleston, one of our clients. They are independent. They do zero insurance work, but they only do mold remediation. They have people calling them left and right about water. They do some here and there, but they went and found a local water company in the area. It's like, hey, we do mold, period. We are the best mold in South Carolina. I need someone I can send water to that I can trust. All of a sudden now they're getting all the mold work from this water company. They're now sending it. Now it's a great relationship. It's funny how that works over just a coffee or just asking a
yeah. I
question.
mean, the networking. I'm not a big fan. Coming from the sales side, I'm not a big fan of, like, was it BNI groups and things like that. Because you're one. That's for the lawn guys. And the pest control guys. I mean, not to step on anybody's toes, but I'm a sales guy at heart. I did it for years, and I was a sales manager. I spoke at national conferences on sales in my past, um, and I have definitely some different opinions. But one of the things I was going to get into a while ago, that was when you guys are hiring salespeople in this industry. Here I was. I was a guy that used to run medical clinics before I got into this industry. I was a program director for a nonprofit medical center. And then our house got destroyed in the 2004 hurricanes. And I did a lot of construction and flipping houses and things like that, prior to that. But that's kind of how I got introduced to this industry because I had to call out a company because I had three floors of my house was covered in mold. Two full floors, and we had a turret on the third floor as a historic home. Um, and so here I am. I'm a professional. I wore a suit to work every day, and I go to work for ServPro as a sales guy. And I get a call the day before I was supposed to start, and the owner is like, "Hey, I know you're starting tomorrow. I know how you dress for the interview, but you need to wear your work clothes to work." I'm like, "Okay." So I get to work on the first day of work, and he says, "Listen, Mike, I should have talked to you about this before, but you are not going to see my clients if you don't know what you're talking about. So you're going to, for the next 4 to 6 weeks, you're going to learn how to do a water damage, and you're going to get certified. You're going to learn how to clean a fire and get certified, and you're going to learn how to do a pack out and contents. And when you get those three things done, and I feel like you are doing a great job and know what you're doing, then I'll let you start calling on my clients." And oh my God, I had to ride the truck with guys. And for my first few days, I felt like I was definitely in another world. What have I done? Oh my God, I got to find something else to do. This is it for me. But I fell in love with it. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with my workers. And the cool thing then as a sales guy is when I called my crew to go do a job or I walked a job site, I had their respect because they knew that I knew what I was talking about and that I didn't mind rolling up my sleeves and getting dirty with them. And every sales guy I've hired, if they didn't have that kind of experience when I hired them, I totally believe in that. For any of you owners out there, I think that is the best thing you can do for your salespeople is to make them work in the field. You know,
Well, it also changes the dynamic of the sale. Are you now trying to force someone to buy something? Or are you now just a product expert? And when you have a great team behind you, you don't sell the product, you sell your team. And it
oh, it's
becomes
all
really
about
easy when I got this phenomenal team that's here to take care. I'm not selling anything, I'm providing a service. And then when
oh,
you switch that dynamic, whew.
yeah. And salespeople, I mean, that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
They sell themselves, and that's the
Yep.
reason clients will follow them. Because there's a lot of guys out there that in sales that, and I'm just going to tell you this, as an advice from someone who's overseen a lot of salespeople in his career. Do not hire a salesperson that has been fired from this industry. Okay? Don't do it unless because there's one or two things that went wrong. Either they sucked as a salesperson and they weren't making enough revenue to pay for their position, or they did something egregious to get fired. So if you're going to hire a salesperson, you hire someone that's looking for more money. That to me, that I hate to say it that way. Salespeople, they do sales for a reason. That's because they want to make more money. And so the only reason I would hire a salesperson is if they could show me that they had a poor commission plan where they were at, but proved to me that they were successful. Or B, that their base salary was low and they're looking for a higher base salary, for some reason. Because if a salesperson has been let go from another contractor, that means they weren't selling enough to keep their own bills paid, to even pay for their position. There's not an owner out there that is going to get rid of a sales guy that generates enough revenue to pay for their salary and their expenses and a little bit of profit. They'll keep them around. So if they've been let go by somebody, don't be the idiot that hires them just because they come off and they talk a lot and they talk a good game and they got great personality. They are not a closer. They are not a closer. What's your opinion on that, Paul? I know I kind of went on a rant there, but it's the truth.
Yeah, you definitely want someone who can speak the lingo, but also in this day and age, if you can, I actually am a personal fan. If I was an owner right now, I would go to your one. I love guys that come and knock on my door to try and sell me solar. One, because I tear them apart every single time. But if you have enough gumption to go and knock on doors when you know people, that's half of the game. Or
At
the guys that
99,
are,
people are going to slam the door in your face and you're going to
yeah,
keep doing it. Hey, that
or the
guy's
guys that are sitting at Costco and Sam's trying to sell me AT&T. You know everyone's going to say no to them. You know they have no problem approaching people and having conversations. Great. What I would encourage you is go find those great people. I tell everyone right now, if you're struggling to hire someone, don't hire that person that maybe has all the certifications and this and that and the other. Go find that person who's got a smile on their face pouring coffee at Wawa at 5 a.m. I guarantee you they're going to show up to work and you can pay them better. Get a mechanism to where you can teach them restoration. You can go find all the hardworking people. You can find the right people, but if you can get them to understand the power of this industry and the power of the services you provide, the rest is easy. Anyone can go to Home Depot and find that guy at 5 in the morning that's cracking jokes, got the music going on, you're in a good mood with him. I can teach him restoration. That's
Yeah,
not hard.
because the other good salesperson to try to find is, if a salesperson comes to me and they're still employed at another company, and I'll ask them, as an owner or a manager, I've always asked, is like, okay, so why are you looking to leave? And one of the things that I kind of like is when they say, well, my clients expect a certain level of quality, and the contractor I'm working for is not providing that. That I will give those people a shot every day because that means they care about what's going on. And you see that. I mean, we all know some, maybe even some people listening to this podcast, there are good contractors, there are bad contractors. I mean, and as an industry, we have done a lot of these things to ourselves, because we have gone out there as an industry. So I'm not saying like any particular contractor, and they've wanted to make a home run on every deal, or they want to get it by and do shoddy work, and they hate the fact that they're doing their jobs, and they hire poor subcontractors because they're cheap, and so on and so forth. Whatever the deal is, you know, and you got a good salesperson because the salespeople always sell themselves. They're building the relationship based on their word, and their word is their bond.
Mm-hmm.
And they're promising a certain level of experience to the client. And when the client don't get that, of course, there's going to be a one-off every now and then. Crap happens, that's what we deal with. I used to tell my guys, don't get worked up over the upset homeowner because when they woke up and poop all over their house, they're going to be in a bad mood. Okay, just deal with it, And I think I've had more empathy because I've lost a house to hurricanes. And I've also had a major water damage in a house before, way before I even thought about this industry. My first home I ever actually owned. Um, but losing a house to a hurricane that had, $196,000 worth of damage, and that was 20 years ago, so that's probably half a million worth of damage in today's terms. Um, it took over a year to fix my house. That was a lot of stress, a lot of financial stress. We ended up moving because we couldn't find a place to live that wasn't like a small apartment, and our family was too big for that, and our lifestyle was just not set up for that. And so we ended up moving, and I had to pick up my life and change careers and everything. And so circling back around, because I can get a little wordy, is make sure that you're hiring salespeople that are hungry, like Paul was talking about, that has guts. Just because they're certified doesn't mean they're very personable. Some of the best people I've dealt with, Paul being one of them. When you meet someone and you felt like you've known them their entire life already within the first few minutes, that's your guy. There's a guy who used to work for me, and I think he is actually still with the same Surf Pro. His name is Farron Beavis. So, Farron, if you're listening, what's up, man? Um, I used to be I was a coworker of his, and I became his boss. Uh, One of those guys, man, you meet him, and I felt like I've known Farron my entire life, and I still talk to him. We message with each other quite often, and he hasn't worked under me in 12 years. But his people will call him because they believe him and they trust him. So don't hire salespeople, on a whim. Take your time. My motto is to hire slow and fire fast. When it comes to anything. So take your time. A good salesperson is going to have a job. That's just all there is.
That, and I think if you're looking to hire a salesperson, I've seen there's a whole different way of doing it, but I see it as two different salespeople. There's the farmer and then the hunter. Know which one you want. If you want someone that's high volume, that's going to go out, get you revenue, hunt, move, and move fast, go find that person. The farmer may not be quite as high a volume. They're not going to be the high numbers, but those clients are going to be with them for life. They're going to have longer term. Know which one you're going for. Because if you hire that farmer to be the guy that's supposed to be hitting 100 calls a day and going, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Find what you're looking for, but don't be afraid to diversify in those as well. Because that one farmer may be that guy where he may not have that whole volume in, but all of a sudden that senior living community, all of a sudden those big clients come out and they have that relationship versus if I just need a guy to turn and burn and go get me those $1,500 jobs as fast as possible, there are people to go and do that. Just have clarity on what you're looking to try and hire.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there for today. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and I appreciate it. This episode is brought to you by Helix Co. and CleanClaims.